Starting with the presidential file, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi inspected on Friday the main control center for the National Network for Public Emergency and Safety Services, which has many mobile centers and crisis management theaters nationwide. The details.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi made an inspection tour on Friday at the mobile centers of the National Network for Public Emergency and Safety, which includes many mobile centers, crisis management rooms, and rescue centers nationwide. The president held a video conference dialogue with governors on the state's efforts for activating the network nationwide, where he was briefed on the equipment used in the network as well as the human cadres involved in its operation system. He hailed the readiness of the network's crisis management rooms nationwide in handling any emergency and urging the necessity of linking them to the main crisis management theater at the strategic command to ensure their effectiveness in a way which reflects the state's ability to tackle any crises or emergencies. President el-Sisi said he will dispatch an inspection committee after a 2-month period to oversee the engineering equipment used in each governorate to deal with any crisis. He expressed his happiness over passing a live experience through a mobile crisis management unit, which enabled him to watch the governorates, interact with governors, and follow up the situation on the ground. The tour came in the framework of the head of a state's keen interest to hold direct contacts with the senior state officials and follow up in person the course of their handling of any sudden events which may cause disruption to the citizens' normal lives.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi on Friday greeted the Egyptian people and the armed forces marking the 50th anniversary of the 6th of October war victory. Via his social media account, the president, the supreme commander of the armed forces, said the war marked the greatest of Egypt's victories in its modern history. President Sisi praised the brave armed forces, the symbol of defiance, and prayed to God to bless the nation's martyr souls who sacrificed their lives for the sake of the nation. For her part, Egypt's First Lady, Mrs. Intisar el-Sisi, on Friday greeted Egyptians and the brave armed forces as Egypt marks the 50th anniversary of the 6th of October war victory. Mrs. Intisar said the victory marks an unforgettable turning point in Egypt's modern history, in which Egyptian heroes embodied a military miracle to restore the land and the national dignity. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi on Friday received greeting cables from senior statesmen and Arab leaders marking the golden jubilee of the October war victory. In his cable, Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri greeted the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, the Egyptian Army, and people on the glorious day, which recalls all meanings of sacrifice and dignity and reflects the Egyptians' strong will at hard times. Saudi King Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman expressed their sincere wishes of health and happiness to President Sisi and the government and people of Egypt on the occasion. Senior Kuwaiti officials, on top of which is Kuwaiti Emir Sheikh Nawaf al-Ahmad al-Jabir al-Sabah, who greeted the armed forces' dear sacrifices and paid tribute to martyrs who offer their bloods and souls to liberate their homeland. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas also greeted the head of state on the 50th anniversary of the glorious war victory. Condemnations poured following a European Parliament statement on the upcoming presidential elections in Egypt. A number of national parties, prominent politicians, along with the Arab Parliament, deemed the statement as being a flagrant foreign interference in the state's internal affairs and a breach to its sovereignty. The details.
The Arab Parliament on Friday joined national parties in condemning a European Parliament statement on the upcoming presidential elections in Egypt. The Pan-Arab body expressed its full solidarity with Egypt against any foreign intervention, saying that the statement carried misleading lies. The Arab Parliament voiced its absolute rejection to the European body's intervention in the Arab internal affairs. A number of national parties have earlier expressed their denunciation of the European Parliament statement on election fairness. The Renaissance and Reform Party denounced the statement's allegations of chasing presidential candidates or any kind of practice against them. It asserted that Egypt's elections are fair and held under full judicial supervision, rejecting any foreign intervention in its internal affairs as unacceptable unacceptable. The Senate's Human Rights Committee also rejected the statement, having included a number of false facts that contradicts reality. The committee slammed that statement, pointing out that the Egyptian leadership itself is keen on holding fair elections. The Social Liberals Party also condemned the statement, saying that the European Parliament has been always creating some crises. Al Ghil Party, meanwhile, described the statement as being a flagrant intervention in a sovereign country's internal affairs. It pointed out that the statements contradict with international laws and an attempt to restore European hegemony. Sons of Egypt Party said that the European Parliament calls for the Egyptian authorities to stop harsh activities against opposition in an unacceptable manner and an unacceptable intervention in the state's affairs, and aims at distorting the Egyptian celebrations of the October War victory.
The House of Representatives said on Friday that it followed with discontent the European Parliament statement on the human rights drive in Egypt and issued a statement dismissing all the allegations endorsed by the EU body. Here are more details.
The House of Representatives said that the European Parliament's recent resolution on the Egyptian political and the human rights affairs reveals prejudice against the country's upcoming presidential elections scheduled for December. In a statement, the House of Representatives denounced the resolution as part of a series of the European Parliament's unjustified and desperate attempts to unlawfully evaluate, direct, and hold accountable those beyond its member states. The statement added that the resolution disregards the international conventions against the foreign interference in the internal affairs of the sovereign states. The House labeled the resolution stillborn and lacking in credibility and impartiality. Numerous political parties and parliamentarians, as well as the Arab Parliament, have also denounced the resolution as a blatant interference in the Egyptian internal affairs. The head of the House said that the resolution's claims reveal the negative prejudice about the electoral process, stressing that the National Election Authority remains impartial toward the presidential hopefuls. The Election Authority has earlier denied any violations or acts of favoritism or harassment towards the electoral candidates. The National Election Authority also formed a committee to receive all the complaints related to the elections, the statement added. In its resolution, the European Parliament for the immediate and the unconditional release of what they called political prisoners, as the House objected to the European Union Parliament's call, saying that they meddle with the Egyptian judiciary, which was and is a sanctuary of justice. The House said that these calls constitute an unacceptable attempt to politicize the rulings of the Egyptian judiciary, labeled these calls as a breach of the Egyptian judicial authority's independence, despite the European Parliament's frequent calls for that same independence. In a statement, the House of Representatives called on the European Parliament to instead focus its efforts on the violations of rights and freedoms by some of its own member states. The European countries display the double standards with regard to the refugees, as Ukrainian refugees have been welcomed while those from the Middle East and Africa face violence and inhumane treatment.